Marriage is built on trust. A vow exchanged in front of family, sealed with promises of loyalty and devotion. Yet, statistics reveal a different reality. Nearly 20 to 25% of married individuals admit to stepping outside their vows. And those are just the ones who confess. Infidelity isn't just a betrayal, it's a dangerous game, with consequences far greater than broken hearts and shattered families. For Jonathan Reynolds, a man who seemingly had it all, temptation came wrapped in luxury and secrecy. A 54-year-old billionaire, a self-made tech mogul, a husband of 30 years, and a father of 2. He wasn't just successful, he was admired, envied. To the world, he was a devoted family man, a philanthropist, a visionary. Yet, in the neon-lit streets of Las Vegas, among the world of high-stakes gambling and private penthouse suites, he was someone else entirely. He had a routine. A pattern so well practiced, so meticulously curated, that no one questioned it. Business trips. High-profile meetings. Weekend conferences. His wife, Elizabeth Reynolds, never suspected a thing. She trusted him. She had no reason not to. Until August 15, 2024. A 911 call shattered the morning calm at the opulent Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. The voice on the other end was panicked, urgent, hotel staff reporting an unresponsive guest in the penthouse suite. The words were clear. The tone? Uneasy. There were no signs of forced entry. No signs of a struggle. Just a man lying motionless, his luxury watch still gleaming under the chandelier lights, a half-empty glass of wine resting on the nightstand beside him. Jonathan Reynolds was dead. A man who had built an empire in the world of technology. A man who had everything: wealth, power, influence. A man whose secret life had finally caught up to him. And the question that haunted investigators from the moment they stepped into that lavish suite wasn't just who had done it. It was why. What they uncovered in the hours that followed would reveal a truth far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. A web of deception, a young woman with a past she kept hidden, and a betrayal that didn't just destroy a marriage, it ended a life. Stay with us as we unravel the double life of Jonathan Reynolds, and the final hours that led to his fate. Who was Jonathan Reynolds? To the world, Jonathan Reynolds was the embodiment of the American dream. A self-made billionaire, a visionary in the tech industry, and a philanthropist whose name graced charity galas and university endowments. He built his empire from the ground up, launching a software company that revolutionized cybersecurity. At 54 years old, he was at the peak of his career, admired, respected, and most importantly, trusted. Trust. A word that carried weight, especially in the life he presented to the world. He had been married for 30 years to Elizabeth Reynolds, his college sweetheart. They lived in an $18 million estate in San Francisco, surrounded by sprawling vineyards and panoramic views of the Golden Gate Bridge. They had 2 adult children, both following in their father's footsteps, one in tech, the other in finance. Jonathan was a man who had it all. But behind the polished image, there were secrets. His business trips to Las Vegas had little to do with board meetings or industry conferences. They were carefully planned, precisely scheduled, and always followed the same script: a luxury suite, exclusive VIP access, and a revolving door of younger women. For years, Jonathan had crafted an illusion of fidelity, one that his wife, his children, and the public never questioned. His indiscretions were carefully hidden beneath the guise of business. Until the night he never made it home. August 15, 2024. The opulent Mirage Hotel was one of the most exclusive in Las Vegas. A place where high rollers and celebrities indulged in excess, shielded from the prying eyes of the public. Its penthouse suite, a 4,000-square-foot masterpiece of luxury, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private infinity pool, and 24-hour butler service, was the last place Jonathan Reynolds would ever be seen alive. 7 a.m., housekeeping knocked, but no answer. It wasn't unusual for guests to sleep in, especially in Las Vegas. The staff moved on. 11:30 a.m., the hotel staff attempted to contact Reynolds. His checkout time had passed. No answer. Calls went straight to voicemail. 1:15 p.m., security entered the room. When the hotel staff finally unlocked the door, the first thing they noticed was the silence. No television. No music. No movement. Just stillness. Jonathan Reynolds lay on the bed, motionless. A $250,000 watch still on his wrist, a half-empty glass of wine beside him. His phone rested on the nightstand, its screen dark, untouched. At first glance, it almost looked peaceful. Until they noticed the bloodstains on the silk sheets. 1:21 p.m., 911 was called. The voice on the line was composed, but there was an undeniable urgency. "We have an unresponsive guest in the penthouse suite. There's blood." Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department arrived within minutes. The moment they stepped inside, it was clear this was no accident. While authorities in Las Vegas were processing the crime scene, Elizabeth Reynolds was growing concerned. Her husband was supposed to return from his business trip the previous night. Jonathan was never late. If anything, he was meticulous about his schedule. His last text to her had been just after midnight, a simple, "Just finished up. See you tomorrow. Love you." Tomorrow came. He never arrived. Elizabeth called. No answer. She texted. No response. By midday, concern turned to panic. She called his assistant, his business partners. No one had heard from him. His private jet was still at the airport. His driver had never picked him up. Something was wrong. At 2:45 p.m., Elizabeth made the call to San Francisco police, reporting her husband missing. By 3 p.m., Las Vegas authorities had already confirmed the worst possible news. Jonathan Reynolds wasn't missing. He was dead. And the circumstances surrounding his death didn't make sense. As investigators stood in the lavish penthouse, surrounded by signs of wealth and excess, one thing became chillingly clear. Someone else had been in that room. And whoever it was, they had disappeared without a trace. What investigators found next would change everything. From the moment investigators entered penthouse suite 501 at the opulent Mirage Hotel, something felt off. Jonathan Reynolds was a billionaire. A man who had built his empire on control of his company, his image, his life. Yet here he was, lifeless on a bed, his final moments shrouded in mystery. As authorities began piecing together the last 24 hours of his life, a disturbing pattern emerged, one that pointed to a secret far more damaging than the crime scene itself. Jonathan Reynolds wasn't in Las Vegas for business. He was here for pleasure. Investigators combed through his phone records, emails, and financial statements. What they found told a very different story than the one his wife and family believed. Dozens of transactions linked to high-end escort services and exclusive dating apps, platforms used by wealthy men seeking discreet companionship. Luxury purchases: a Patek Philippe watch for one woman, a Bentley SUV for another, $50,000 in jewelry for someone else. A pattern of cash withdrawals in increments of $10,000 to $25,000, amounts just low enough to avoid raising alarms with banks or his financial advisors. This wasn't an affair. This was a lifestyle. Jonathan Reynolds had a network of younger women across multiple cities, women he lured in with money, status, and promises. Women whose identities were carefully concealed, their interactions protected by private messaging services and encrypted apps. To the world, Jonathan Reynolds was a devoted husband. To these women, he was something else entirely. Suspicious details began to surface as investigators worked through surveillance footage from the hotel. They focused on the night of August 14, 2024, Jonathan Reynolds' final night alive. At 9:42 p.m., he stepped out of an Escalade at the hotel's VIP entrance. Alone. He wore a dark suit, a Rolex shimmering under the lobby's gold lighting. At 9:55 p.m., he was joined by a woman. Young. Blonde. Dressed in a sleek red dress. The two exchanged a few words in the lobby. Then, without hesitation, they entered the private elevator to the penthouse. Hotel records confirmed her identity: Samantha Delacroix, 27 years old. A name unfamiliar to his family. A name that would soon become central to the investigation. Witnesses, hotel staff, bartenders, even the butler assigned to his suite, began recalling key details. Jonathan Reynolds had been a frequent guest at the opulent Mirage. He often arrived alone but was rarely alone by the end of the night. Staff had seen multiple women come and go from his suite during past stays. Samantha Delacroix wasn't the first. And she might not have been the last. When authorities contacted Elizabeth Reynolds, her shock was undeniable. "My husband? An affair? That's impossible." To her, Jonathan was a loving partner, a dedicated father, a man who prioritized his family over everything. He had always been transparent about his trips, his business dealings. She never questioned him. She never had a reason to. But when detectives began pressing for details, his frequent business trips, his late-night calls, his discreet financial transactions, a different picture began forming. Jonathan Reynolds had secrets. And he was willing to spend millions to keep them buried. Then came the anonymous tip. A call to the Las Vegas Police Department, just hours after his death was confirmed. The voice was calm, measured, yet unmistakably urgent. "Jonathan's dealings were more dangerous than they seemed. This wasn't random. He was playing with fire." The line went dead before investigators could trace it. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about power, money, and the price of deception. Jonathan Reynolds had been keeping more than one secret. And one of them had just gotten him killed. What investigators uncovered next would change everything. The deeper investigators dug into Jonathan Reynolds' final hours, the more disturbing the story became. The penthouse suite where his lifeless body was found wasn't just a crime scene, it was a battleground. Crime scene discovery, a struggle for life. When Las Vegas PD entered penthouse suite 501, they immediately knew this was no natural death. The room told its own story. Furniture overturned. A glass table shattered, its fragments scattered across the marble floor. A blood-stained pillow. Small, but enough to suggest he had been struck. Bruises on Reynolds' arms and torso. Defensive wounds. Signs of a struggle. A half-empty wine glass resting on the nightstand, the last thing Jonathan Reynolds ever drank. He hadn't simply died in his sleep. He had fought for his life. The official autopsy report, released 48 hours later, confirmed what detectives feared. Jonathan Reynolds hadn't been beaten to death. He had been poisoned. The toxin found in his bloodstream was aconitine, a highly lethal substance derived from monkshood, also known as the Queen of Poisons. It shuts down the nervous system, causing excruciating pain, paralysis, and ultimately, cardiac arrest. Within 30 minutes, the victim suffocates in their own body. Traces of the toxin were discovered in the wine glass beside Reynolds' body. Which meant only one thing: someone had laced his drink. The CCTV footage twist. Samantha Delacroix's vanishing act. Detectives turned their attention to the last person seen with Jonathan Reynolds, Samantha Delacroix. Hotel security footage provided chilling details. At 9:55 p.m., she and Reynolds entered the penthouse suite together. At 11:23 p.m., she left alone. Her stride was quick. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. Something had happened inside that suite. And then, an even bigger revelation: Samantha Delacroix didn't exist. The name was fake. Her ID was fake. The woman seen on camera that night had been using multiple identities, and had a history of conning wealthy men. And she wasn't working alone. As investigators traced Samantha's history, they discovered one name that appeared over and over again: Damian Cole. A convicted felon. A man with ties to organized crime. A known extortionist and enforcer. And most disturbingly, he had a reputation for targeting powerful men with secrets. Financial records linked him to Samantha. Text messages suggested a coordinated scheme. Witnesses recalled seeing him near the opulent Mirage Hotel on the night of the murder. Jonathan Reynolds had thought he was in control. But he had just become the target of a deadly game. The truth about Jonathan Reynolds' death was now clear. He hadn't been the victim of a random crime. He had been hunted, targeted, executed. And now, the people responsible for his murder were on the run. The international manhunt, stopping them before they disappear after uncovering Samantha Delacroix's true identity and linking her to Damian Cole, law enforcement issued an immediate arrest warrant for both suspects. But there was a problem. They were already gone. Investigators traced their movements using security footage, credit card transactions, and witness statements. At 6:45 a.m., just hours after Reynolds was found dead, Samantha was seen boarding a private jet at a small airstrip outside of Las Vegas. At 7:10 a.m., Damian Cole withdrew $50,000 in cash from an offshore account before disappearing. Their destination? Mexico City. The clock was ticking. If they made it across international borders, the chances of bringing them to justice would plummet. On August 18, 2024, after a 48-hour coordinated effort between FBI agents, Interpol, and Mexican authorities, a dramatic raid was conducted at a luxury villa just outside of Mexico City. Inside they found Samantha Delacroix, hiding in a bedroom closet, clutching a burner phone. Damian Cole, heavily armed, attempting to escape through a back entrance. Both were arrested without incident and extradited back to the United States. During interrogation, the story of Jonathan Reynolds' murder unfolded. Delacroix's confession, a deadly scheme unveiled. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Samantha Delacroix cracked first. Through tears and trembling hands, she described the entire operation. She wasn't just a con artist, she was part of a sophisticated network that targeted wealthy men, exploiting their secrets, desires, and weaknesses. Jonathan Reynolds had been the perfect target, powerful, reckless, and willing to spend millions to keep his affairs hidden. The plan was simple: seduce, manipulate, steal, and disappear. The poisoning was never supposed to happen so soon, but when Reynolds threatened to cut her off, Damian Cole ordered the hit. Her confession confirmed what investigators had feared all along. Jonathan Reynolds wasn't their first victim. And he wouldn't have been their last. As detectives dug deeper into Delacroix and Cole's past, a terrifying pattern emerged. Two other high-profile men, a New York real estate tycoon and a Miami hedge fund manager, had died under similar circumstances. Both cases were initially ruled as overdoses or natural causes. Both victims had been romantically linked to a mysterious woman matching Delacroix's description. This wasn't just a murder-for-money scheme. It was a serial operation. After months of courtroom battles, the final verdict came in March 2025. Samantha Delacroix was sentenced to life in prison without parole for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. Damian Cole, already a convicted felon, was sentenced to death under Nevada law. For Jonathan Reynolds' family, the verdict provided closure, but no relief from the devastation he left behind. For Elizabeth Reynolds, the revelations about her husband's double life were worse than the murder itself. She had stood by him for 3 decades, raising their children, believing in the life they built. Now, she had to reconcile the reality that he had lied to her for years, spent millions on mistresses, and ultimately put himself in a situation that cost him his life. The Reynolds family faced public humiliation, lawsuits, and a tarnished legacy. Their once flawless reputation was now synonymous with betrayal, scandal, and murder. Jonathan Reynolds wasn't the first powerful man to fall victim to greed, deception, and dangerous liaisons. And he wouldn't be the last. His case served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that infidelity can carry more than just emotional consequences, it can be deadly. Secrets, no matter how well hidden, have a way of surfacing. And sometimes, the price of betrayal is paid in blood. Was justice truly served? How many more victims might be out there, undiscovered? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love true crime stories that expose the hidden dangers lurking in the shadows, subscribe now. Because in the end, every crime has a final truth.